Hi there, Year 8. This is your second science lesson this week. I hope you had a lovely half term. It's good to be back. This lesson is going to be on inheritance. So grab your book or your paper, your pen and your ruler, write down the title and underline it, please. Inheritance. We've got some key terms today that I'd also like you to write down. These are gene, inheritance, nucleus, chromosomes, fertilization, and DNA. The lesson objectives today are we are going to recap and remember what inherited genes are and what that means. We're going to identify chromosomes, DNA and genes. We're going to describe the shape of DNA and we're going to explain how genes are inherited from parents. Once you've written down all of that, have a little go at this first thing that we've got. Look at this picture of Brooklyn Beckham and David Beckham. How can you tell that Brooklyn is David's son? In what ways are they similar and in what ways are they different? Don't forget the similarities. Don't just jump straight onto the differences. Have a little go, write it down. Right, once you've had a go at that, you might have come up with some of these ideas. These are the ones that I noticed. Similarities, the hair colour is pretty much the same. Their eye colour from the picture looks quite similar. Skin tone is the same. And the shape of their faces is quite similar. Differences that I can see is their height. It doesn't necessarily mean that Brooklyn won't grow to the same height, but at the moment they are different heights. Obviously age. And a little bit, looking a bit deeper here, eyebrow shape and eye shape I think looks slightly different. If you see any other differences, brilliant. There are probably some I didn't spot. Take a picture of your work, send it in. I'd like to see what you came up with. So here's our next question. Why do you look a little bit like your mum and a bit like your dad? Looking at me, I've got red hair like my mum had. I'm average height, like both of my parents are. I'm pale like my mum, but I don't have freckles like my dad. My mum gets freckles, but my dad does not. These things are called characteristics, and you'll probably find that you've got some that are like your dad and some that are like your mum. So this is your task. You've got to think about your own characteristics. Did you get them from your mum or from your dad? So list a couple like I have and see if you can identify which parent they came from. If you don't want to do your parents, you can have a think about the Gordon Ramsay family. So the picture above, you can see Gordon Ramsay, very famous chef, on the left, and his wife is on the right, on the other side, and in the middle, those are their children. So I'd like you to have a think about their children. Did they get their characteristics from their mum or from their dad? Here's another question. You inherit certain characteristics from your parents, as we've seen, but can you remember what some of those characteristics are? I'm going to give you an example of one that you don't inherit from your parents. For example, getting burnt in the sun. Getting a sunburn isn't an inherited characteristic. That's what's known as an environmental characteristic. Can you remember the characteristics that we only inherit from our parents? Write them down, see if you get them. Okay, and did you get these? You have got blood group, whether you've got type A, type B, type O, or type AB. Eye colour, unless you put contacts in, but just avoid that for now. Hair colour, if your earlobes are attached or unattached. And tongue rolling, can you roll your tongue or not? You might remember these from a lesson just before half term. If you got 2 or 3 out of 5, you've done really, really well, well remembered. If you got 1 or 2, that is brilliant. Make sure that you write down the ones that you missed so that you've got a note of them. Okay, for this part of the video, I want you to grab a pencil because you're going to need to draw something. Now we're thinking about getting these characteristics from our parents, but how does that actually work? What happens in the body to make sure that we inherit these characteristics? So we are made up of cells, tiny, tiny, tiny building blocks called cells. And even smaller than the cells, inside the cell is a nucleus. In the nucleus is all important information. And inside the nucleus, if we were to zoom in on the nucleus, you see these things. These are called chromosomes. Now, chromosomes have this very distinctive shape. You can see it here. It looks a little bit like an X. And they are made of very tightly wrapped DNA. You might have heard the term DNA before, really special chemical. DNA looks a little bit like this. It looks like a twisted ladder. It's actually called a double helix. And any section of DNA is called a gene. So if we look at one particular section of DNA, it's called a gene. So remember, DNA is teeny, teeny, tiny. Then it's wrapped up into these chromosomes that are still really, really small. And then the chromosomes are found in every single one of the cells in your body. Now, it's a really important diagram, this, because we need to understand what all these things are. So grab your pencil and have a go at copying this down into your book or onto your paper. Make sure you get the keywords in there. We've got lots on this picture. We've got cell, nucleus, chromosome, DNA, and gene. Make sure you label them correctly. And I would love to see your beautiful drawings, so send them in if you've done them. So now we're going to think about this really, really important chemical, DNA. If you want to impress people, you can tell them that you know that it stands for deoxyribonucleic acid. There you go, see if you can remember that one. The shape of DNA is this very special shape. It's called a double helix. It looks a little bit like a ladder that someone has twisted into this spiral. And DNA is a chemical that contains all the genetic information to make you who you are. The shape's really important because by knowing the shape, we can understand a little bit more about how DNA works in the cells. And the shape wasn't discovered until the 1950s, and it was discovered by these 4 scientists that you can see at the bottom. Francis Crick, James Watson, Maurice Wilkins, and Rosalind Franklin. Their work was so important that the 3 men won the Nobel Prize, a really important prize in science. Unfortunately, Rosalind Franklin did not win the prize for this, which was a shame. Women didn't necessarily get recognition very easily in science at that time, but everyone agrees now that she probably should have won the prize as well. They're important names to know, so if you can write down in your notes that it was discovered in the 1950s by these 4 very important scientists. And write down the name of the shape of DNA, and that is a lovely diagram to draw as well. Lots of drawing today. Okay, I hope you still got those pencils in hand because we've got another very important diagram to have a look at. This is how you get DNA from your mum and from your dad, from both parents. So as we said, in the cells in your body, they contain chromosomes. Now, normally a cell in your body has got 46 chromosomes, but the sperm and the egg cells, obviously sperm for men and egg for women, are very important because they've got half the number of chromosomes. One sperm contains 23 chromosomes, one egg contains 23 chromosomes. And what happens after sexual intercourse is that one of the sperm will find an egg, and when they join together, it's known as fertilization. At that point, you get the 23 chromosomes from the sperm, the 23 chromosomes from the egg joining together to make one cell that contains 46 chromosomes. And that's the number that all your body cells need to have. And that's how we all begin, as a single cell that then will divide and divide and divide and divide until an embryo grows. So I'd like you to, this is the final thing that you have to copy down, I promise, but draw out this diagram beautifully, please, with nice straight arrows, and make sure you include the number of chromosomes at each stage. So the sperm and egg have got 23, and the embryo has 46 chromosomes. Okay, year 8, brilliant. You are at the end of the lesson. You've done really, really well. Our lesson objectives today were, first of all, to recap inherited genes. So if you remember, the ones that we inherit are things like eye colour, tongue rolling, and earlobes. Are they attached or are they unattached? We were then going to identify chromosomes, DNA, and genes. And if you look back on your diagram, you can see that we've done that. Remember, DNA is that chemical that is tightly wrapped into chromosomes, which are found in the nucleus of cells. We then had to describe the shape of DNA, and it is a double helix. It looks like a twisted ladder, but the shape of it is called a double helix. And then finally, we had to explain how genes are inherited from our parents. So there are 23 chromosomes from a sperm, 23 chromosomes from an egg. Fertilization is what happens when they meet and the sperm fertilizes the egg. And then it creates a normal body cell, which has 46 chromosomes. So all of the cells in your body will have half of the genetic material from mum and half from dad. You've done brilliantly. I know there was a lot of drawing and writing this lesson, but it's really important. So I'd love to see what you have drawn, all of your beautiful diagrams. Please send them in to me and I will make sure to put them in a shout out because I love featuring your work. And when you've done this, there is a short quiz on Show My Homework. So head over there, finish it up, and then we'll know that you have joined us for this lesson. You are all awesome. Very, very well done. Here's an extra challenge for you absolute science superstars, and I've already seen some of the things that you guys have done and they are awesome. So if you fancy a bit of a challenge, here it is. Build a model of some DNA. You can use sweets, marshmallows, string, cocktail sticks, anything you can find. Bonus, with sweets, you can always eat them afterwards. Send pictures if you take part in the challenge. I love seeing what you guys have been making at home. And an extra bonus challenge. We saw some letters earlier on the picture of DNA. I'd like to see if you can find out what are C, T, G, and A. What are the significance of those? See if you can find out. You might notice that the colours on these sweet models of these DNA seem to always be matching. Why is that? See if you can find out. If you take part in the challenge, send us your pictures. I would love to see what you guys make.